You guys ready for a philosophy video? You love philosophy, don't you? Yeah, I love philosophy. Now that Molyneux is gone, where can people find philosophy? I got philosophy right here, baby. I got philosophy. Different type of philosophy, but philosophy nonetheless. So if you don't know, I play Dungeons and Dragons with a couple of other YouTubers. Short Fat Otaku, Arch Warhammer. Actually, he's just Arch now. And Sargon of Akkad. It's on my live stream channel every Wednesday at 9:30. We play Dungeons and Dragons. And if you're not into Dungeons and Dragons, that's fine. This is not about it. What I wanted to point out is that I am the dungeon master, so I have to create an interesting world for the players to play in. And the way I do it is I try to create different factions. I try to create civilizations which have different philosophy and different ways of doing things, and then pit them against each other because this causes really good drama. It causes really interesting scenarios for the players to partake in. Like, for example, I have this theocracy on one side of the map, which is based on Christianity, and they're neighboring a civilizations of elves that are into magic, blood sacrifice, and I inspire myself a lot from Aztec culture. So you kind of understand, like this is going to cause conflict, obviously. And how are the players going to solve these conflicts that came up? And another thing that I want to do is I want my Dungeons and Dragons to be different than any other type of campaigns. Like I want to have Cyberpunk meets Dungeons and Dragons, and no, I'm not talking about Shadowrun. Like I want to see what happens when an Abrams tank faces an Earth Elemental. Like, who's going to win? Is it the Earth Elemental or is it the tank? I want to see what happens when a Black Hawk helicopter goes into a dragon. Who's going to win? Like, these are the interesting things. Like, what would happen if a high-tech, non-magical society would have to face against a society of pure magic? And I think there are ways to do this while using the actual manual. For example, a spell like Zone of Silence, which prevents magic casters from using abilities, can now have a different flavor. Like, what if the high-tech guys just discover a little grenade that emits a powerful sound, and the magicians can't concentrate. They can't figure out how to do the spells unless they get away from that. Like, you just change the flavor of the text, and the spell remains the same. So it's really interesting, right? Like, you can have a lot of leeway. But anyway, right, so instead of a fireball, you can have a rocket launcher. The guy just fires the rocket, and then you have, like, the fireball. It's the same thing. Like, it maintains balance by using the manual. You just change the flavor a little bit. So when I added the cyberpunk civilization, I had to think about making them really interesting. Like, how would they look like? What would they be like? Like, how do you make something interesting? And I think, like, the way you can write an interesting story is if you take things from real life that are good, such as empathy, compassion, and kindness, and truth, and you take them to such extreme that they become bad. And this is, like, why they constantly say everything should be taken in moderation. Because even when you take something as compassion and empathy to an extreme, it can become very destructive. So I try to mix, like, what would look like if you were to mix communism and capitalism together and try to push them into this one ideology. How it would look like, what it would be like on paper. So I thought that in my world, there would be this scientist by the name of Henry Gibbs, which looked at the assertion that one death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic, and he wanted to actually see, like, what is the correct number? Like, how many people that die would actually be a tragedy versus how many people would be a statistic? Like, he wanted to scientifically measure this. He wanted to see just how many people you can care about. And he invented this machine that can test the ability of individuals to see just how many friends you're capable of having. And by friends, I mean, like, people you actually genuinely care about, like people you're actually compassionate for. like your inner circle of friends, right? Like not acquaintances, not strangers, like the people that you would actually lend money to, let's say like that. And he noticed that different people come up with different numbers. Like the average of people were somewhere around, let's say, 150, just for the sake of it. So you would be able to care, like this is the maximum number of people you are able to care, would be 150. But there were other people that could be empathetic and care about even higher numbers, all the way to 400. And then you had people that were sociopaths and they cared about very few people. So obviously, like this caused a little bit of commotion in the society. Corporations started pushing for this idea that you need to be empathetic, you need to care about big numbers of people. But again, like this is how people were born. Like they were born with this capacity of empathy, and through life experience, they could raise the number of friends they would have until they reached the maximum. And again, like some people that were sociopathic in nature, no matter what society would do, no matter what they would do, like they would never be able to care about more people. So throughout the decades and after Henry Gibbs dies, the government moved and society moved to a way where they would just test people at birth. And they would realize, all right, well, this person can care about only 158 people. So what they would do is like they would pair him with other people that could only care about 158. Because they would view that it wouldn't be fair to pair someone that cares only about 158 people with, let's say, a group that only cares about 157, right? Because that wouldn't be fair, like one person would be left out. So they realized that it would create these strong bonds of friendship and they would bring community together if they would form collectives of people that care about the same number of people. So obviously this went into a very tribalistic approach. People started forming these in-group collectives that were like communism in a way. Like they shared everything. They care about each other very much. They loved each other as families. But the problem was with the out-group. Like what do you do with the out-group? And that's where the capitalism comes in. Like the collective, whenever you have like this group of people, they care about each other a lot. And they are exactly the communist dream. Like they work as hard as possible to help the collective. They only take what they need. They share everything they have with each other. The idea of private property within the collective doesn't exist. Like they share everything. But with the outgroup, with other collectives, they're very capitalistic in nature. Like they try their best to profit as much as they can for others. So there is insane amounts of empathy for the in-group, but almost no empathy for the out-group. And their society constantly focused on trying their best to create the perfect human being, like the perfect that is more empathetic than everyone else. Like right now, if the most empathetic person, let's say, can care about 2,000 people, well, the desired goal is to raise that number higher and higher. And they're quite frustrated that they could never create the utopia, like the person that literally cares about everyone. And the reason they did not manage to do this is because they never understood that people are born with a maximum number of friends is so that they can actually have empathy for strangers. And in this society, there is no empathy for strangers. Like every single stranger is someone you should take advantage of, someone you should get money from, someone you should make a contract with that is in his detriment and in your benefit. And in this case, your means the collective, right? Because they don't view themselves as individuals. In fact, the way they name themselves is with the numbers. So if someone is like 145 of 1,843, that means that that person can only care about 145 people as friends, and he is part of the collective number 1,843. And that's how they identify themselves. And they have an extra number that would dictate their position in that collective. So let's say -7, and it's like member number 7 of the collective that can only care about 145 people, numbered, So obviously the groups that had larger amounts of people, they have more manpower and Because of their capacity for empathy, they manage to rise quickly to the top. These collectives are made of groups that are so empathetic to one another that they're willing to take a bullet for each one member of the collective. So the large groups are going to climb to the top of the economic ladder. And because of this, you have a society that is driven to maximum economical productivity. If you wanted people to care about you, then you turn to your collective. While if you look outside, you will only find ruthlessness and people that are trying to take money away from you. So this obviously is going to turn into an industrial hell where everything is going to be weighed against maximum productivity. And here's where the communism comes in, right? Like if their philosophy is to create the most empathetic human, the person that cares about the most so they can be in a big collective and have big manpower in order to do things, they're going to try to use science in order to create this. So here's where they create artificial wombs in order to remove the need for women to be mothers and to remove the need for parents to educate their children. They will have chips implanted in them so that you can just download whatever experience is required so that the member of the collective can fulfill those functions. And all of this is at the cost of humanity itself. Even though like they're highly empathetic and they're focused on caring about one another, they are quite ruthless. They're almost inhuman in their behavior. And what I wanted to add is something else that would spice things up a bit, because obviously the collectives have to work with one another, even though they don't trust each other or they don't believe in one another. Like how can you bring them together? And I thought it's like maybe they have this philosophy where lying is a sin. Like the capital crime would be lying to someone else. Because if you think about it, let's say you could abolish something from a society. Like let's say you abolish murder. And no one can kill themselves, right? You still have the other crimes. Like you still have rape, you still have violence, you still have all the other crimes like corruption. So what if instead you could abolish lying? Like people would be unable to lie. Well, what would happen is that you would still have all the other crimes, but like if there's a murder, then the police can just ask the people around, is any one of you a murderer? And because they can't lie, the person that would lift his hand, the murderer would have to lift his hand. So lying allows for all the other crimes to be committed, because if you know you're not allowed to lie when asked a direct question and you commit a crime, then you're going to have to confess to it. So people are a lot less likely to commit crimes knowing that they have been caught. Now, proving a lie is very difficult because people can lie by omission, people can lie by deception. Like people can say, well, it's my opinion, or people can say, well, at the time I believed such, but now I don't believe that. So there's still a lot of wiggle room for people to bullshit each other. But the punishment, if you're actually caught with a lie, which is a difficult process, is always death. And if you're going to see that other people are being capitally punished for lying, then you're more likely to censor yourself. You're more likely to not risk it. Even though you can bullshit, it's a lot less likely to do so if you know what the punishment is. So yeah, I mean, this is an interesting way that I think you can mix communism and capitalism in the same thing. Like you're going to have this society that operates on collectives, and they're like the communist communes, if you will, where is the communist utopia. Everyone actually genuinely shares things because they actually do care about one another, like an extended family. And then you have like other groups, and between them you have capitalism. Like all of the same unrestrained capitalism that you can dream of. Predatory practices and whatnot. So instead of like having individuals, you just have collectives, like multiple collectives that would represent just like the individuals. And some are big, some are small. And obviously like the bigger ones, they have not just more manpower, but like there is a bigger chance that in a large collective you will have a brilliant person like a scientist or someone that is a genius, and obviously like those people can pull up their entire collective, while if you're in a collective with just 150 people, the chance of having such rare people is smaller. So yeah, I mean, I think I created an interesting faction. Like, I'm curious, what do you guys think? And also like they hate magic to an extreme. The reason they hate magic and they think that magic should not be allowed to exist is because they view like magic allows the individual to transcend the collective. They view like, if you take a person that's a sociopath and only has like 2 or 3 friends, well, with magic, now he can be more productive than an entire collective of people. Now he can, just by himself, by doing magic, it causes the individual to gain so much power that it rivals even like the big collective. So they view it as an affront to everything they believe in. They view it as an abomination. They view that magic, like for example, allows someone to use an illusion, and just by walking on the streets pretending to be like a CEO or something, he doesn't necessarily lie. Like he doesn't outright lie. It's like, but it's deceptive. It's so deceptive that everyone is going to get like the wrong interpretation of what's going on. Yeah. And this faction likes to conquer other dimensions, and they're actually really good at doing that. And this is why they're in my world trying to take over the other factions. And what they want to do is they want to just trade and have cultural exchanges with the other factions, but really what they want is just cheap labor. Like they want people that are lobotomized and just devoid of all emotions to be at an assembly line and get minimum payment. My game takes place in hell, so it's going to be really easy for them to say, oh, we're going to protect you from the demons. Like we have the power to hold all the demons at hell at bay. If you come in our city, you're going to be protected from that. You just have to work, like you have to contribute. So they're going to take in refugees. They're going to be for open borders. They're going to want other cultures to join them. There are going to be like a couple of conditions, like no magic users, no, like the people who have very little empathy, the people that don't care about our people are going to be put on the assembly line. And they will view this as actually helping these people. They will see, well, like if you take a peasant that can only farm so much land, but you put him in a factory, well, you're improving his life because now he can reach his maximum productivity. Now he can be an even better member of society, and now he can share our lifestyle. He can drink our sugary beverages, and he can eat our really good snacks, and all the money that he gets, he can spend on things that consumerism, like he's going to improve his life just by working with us. And it's going to be interesting. I'm curious what the players are going to do. This is just one of the factions that I have created, and hopefully they can be the antagonist faction, the one that wants to take over the world. But the players could ally themselves with them. It really depends on how things are going to go. And yes, there are other factions that are at war with each other because of the differences in philosophy, the resources that one faction can have. Like, for example, they can stay on a big pile of mithril. Mithril being such a rare element that the very technologically advanced faction would covet and they would want. It's like, oh, well, you have mithril. Oh, well, the problem is that there's already people situated on it. Well, it would be inhumane to attack them, but maybe if we convince enough people to join us from that particular area, and, through the open borders thing, we just get as many as possible to join us, then we can just buy the land from the ones that remain. And there's no imperialism, right? Like, there's no conquest. It's just like business. It's using their free will to sell their plot of land. Let me know what you think. And again, I play D&D every single Wednesday at Romanian time, 9:30 p.m. on my live stream channel. So if you aren't subscribed, consider doing so. And I'm really curious, how do you find this? Let me know in the comment section.